This is Late Night Health. I'm Mark Alyn. After a couple weeks off for vacation, we have Dr. Paul D. Corona, the author of Healing the Mind and Body. It's a trilogy. It's unlocking the secret truths about the mind-body connection to achieve optimal mind-body harmony and health. Dr. Paul, welcome home.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be back.
It is great to have you back. We have I was going to do something lighter, and then in the news this week, there was a tragedy, and I thought we should talk about it. And we talked about it the other day. A European pilot, apparently depressed, anxious. I'm not sure. You'll tell us what you think. He was a co-pilot, and the pilot went out of the cockpit to go to the bathroom, and that's when the co-pilot decided to drive the plane full of passengers into a mountain, killing everybody. So the question to you is, can I know if one of my friends, my kid, my wife, family member is going to just snap and do something really crazy like that?
Mark, this is a tragic event. I've been looking and reading everything I can about this. It's just horrible. From my memory, I don't think I've ever heard of something like this happening before with a pilot. So it's obviously, thankfully, very unusual, but it's a tragic event.
Absolutely,
it's just hard. It's hard to comprehend this happening.
I think that how did the things that went through my head were, well, how did they let this guy into the cockpit? Didn't they know? And that, which, to try to bring it to our lives, can you see somebody's about to snap or not?
Well, supposedly, people who knew him knew that he was mentally disturbed. His ex-girlfriend broke up with him because she scared him, or he scared her. And if you look back in his history, they did know about this. He obviously shouldn't have been allowed to fly, but his psychiatric issues date back several years, back into before he even did any kind of flight training. He was treated for depression. He had suicidal thinking and tendencies at that time. So this is not something that's really new. But obviously it got just pushed under the rug, and with tragic consequences. Absolutely.
I had heard that he had, as you said, slipped through the system, that he had, some severe mental issues, but that he somehow buried them. It brings us back to, he seemed to be normal to other people. And they let him into an airplane, to fly it. How do I know that my kid isn't going to snap when he gets into a car and mow down people or whatever? Is there a way? Are there signals for the average person?
Well, in the average person, the thing is, in this field of medicine, we go by people's word and what they tell us. And, I've treated, over 23 years, I've treated people with depression, with anxiety, with bipolar disorder. And not once in my 23 years that I know of have I had a patient of mine snapping like this and killing other people. And this is not just people thinking, well, he was depressed and he had suicidal thinking in the past. Well, this goes way beyond that. I mean, it's one thing if you're depressed to feel suicidal. It's another thing to kill 150 people. This was murder. This wasn't just a simple suicide. So, and this is not a simple case of mild clinical depression as I've seen.
And he obviously had anger issues, killing 150 people.
My suspicion, looking back and reading through his records, is that he had bipolar disorder and a severe case of it, because of the fact that depression is not going to lead to murder. That really is more consistent with a psychotic. He may have had a psychotic episode. he was reportedly on antipsychotic medications back in 2010.
And they still let him fly. Oops.
And they still let him fly, which is beyond comprehension. And supposedly he'd also had notes from his doctor that he shouldn't be flying, but that he didn't show them to the employer. So why does not the psychiatrist in that case notify the employer directly? Why, he's giving this guy a note to take to the employer, and of course the guy doesn't want to take it because he knows if he takes the note, he'll be taken up. So obviously there's something wrong with the reporting here, reporting process here, because the fact that we're relying on this guy who is obviously quite crazy to give the note to the employer that's going to effectively take him out of work.
Right. I was thinking the other day about this, and as I was watching a TV program, and I was watching a program from the BBC, and it was a World War I episode, the end of the war, and a soldier came back, and before the war, he was fun and lively, and to use the term of the day, gay, and just a delight. He came back, and he had what we now call post-traumatic stress syndrome, and he was lashing out at his wife and other people and scaring them because he thought they were enemy soldiers attacking him. Would this be similar? Or is that a completely different thing than what we saw with this European pilot?
Well, I mean, there's no evidence of anything post-traumatic happening with this pilot. He was an athlete. He ran half marathons. There's no evidence of, unless the breakup from the girlfriend caused some trauma, but it's a little bit different. But the similarity here is that with airline pilots and people in the military, medications are frowned on. And typically with the FAA, which is the Aeronautics Institute, they do not allow pilots to, at least in the United States, to go on medications if they're depressed.
Right. They can't drink for I don't know how many hours before they fly. Flight attendants, the same thing.
And they're not allowed to take any type of antidepressants either.
Right.
But I think, it's basically, I've talked to a psychiatrist about this who treats pilots, and he told me that the public would not be happy with pilots taking antidepressant medications, and so it's frowned upon. Now, I think it's different in Europe because than it is here. They have different standards there.
I would think that would be. I would hope that would be international. I do not want my pilot flying depressed because he got up. His wife kicked him out that morning.
Right.
I mean, that's my opinion, and I'm not a.
Right.
I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm just a traveler. I expect those guys to be safe and, frankly, sane.
Right. But it opens up a can of worms here because, what if someone's mildly depressed or is having marital problems? Should he be allowed to fly? I think, the other thing to keep in perspective here is that this is a horribly tragic event, but I've never heard of this ever happening before. I've never heard of a pilot snapping to the point where killing the passengers on board. So
I have not either.
This is an isolated incident. But it's obviously looking at this guy's records that he should not have been flying.
What would you have done if you were seeing him as a patient, looking at his records now? You would have, told his employer not to fly. I mean, just from what you've said,
absolutely,
I would have said that.
Absolutely. And this guy, because again, if you looked at his history, it was not a simple case of mild depression. This guy had, in my opinion, by looking at his records, severe bipolar disorder. And bipolar disorder, remember, is episodes potentially of psychotic behavior, like which he was psychotic episodes, followed by severe depression. And this guy may have been in a manic episode. He may have had a psychotic break at the time for this to happen. But it looks like there may have been premeditation, because he also told his ex-girlfriend that he wanted his name to be known. He wanted to be renowned. He wanted, and so unfortunately, his name will be known.
Yeah, it will be. It's as you have said several times, it is a tragedy. How can we, as a society, cope with these kinds of tragedies? I mean, I can't imagine getting a phone call being told pilot just drove this plane into a mountain. Family members or friends were on it. I mean, that's awful.
Yeah, how can you cope with something like this? I mean, it's. I think the whole world is mourning this. We feel for the families and the victims of this, and all we can do, I think, is try to learn from it. Obviously, the rules are going to get a lot stricter because of this, which they should.
Absolutely, absolutely, they should, and quickly. We hope.
Well, in the United States, it's not. See, what happened since 9/11 was that they made the cockpit doors extremely sturdy so that they can't get broken into. But in the United States, the standard is always have two people in the cockpit at all times. In Europe, I guess they didn't have that same standard.
Well, I thought, I didn't realize. I don't know this because I'm not a pilot. I was just on a plane, as you know, on Sunday, coming back from Washington, D.C., the Natural Products Day, and
right.
some work I was doing in New York City. And I'm sure that somebody came out of the control room, the flight deck, to go to the restroom. I mean, unless there's a restroom in there, I don't know the answer to that.
And there probably should be.
Yeah.
But my understanding is that if a pilot leaves the cockpit, that someone else, like maybe the head stewardess, is supposed to go in and in the cockpit while waiting for the person to come back. But so that something like this hopefully wouldn't happen if there's someone else there to stop them, or at least to open the door up from the inside.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. My understanding was that the pilot had tried to get back in and could not. After that, it's a very big tragedy, and our thoughts and prayers go out to those families who have lost. Our guest, of course, the amazing Paul Corona. He's an MD. He's written a book. It's not a book. It's a trilogy, and it's a must-have. It's called Healing the Mind and Body. It's a trilogy, and it really can help you get your life together, which is what the purpose is. Dr. Corona, hold on for us. In just a couple of moments, we're going to be talking with Jay on the drums on yoga and drumming. And I have to explain why to Dr. Corona as we take this break here on Late Night Health. I'm Mark Alyn. Like us on Facebook.com/Late Night Health. Facebook.com/Late Night Health.